All right, welcome back to another episode of Talking Fight. Joining me again this evening are Derek, Mike, and Christian. As we did last week, which was a resounding success, we'll draw a question from the faithful. This one comes out of Memphis, a fellow by the name of John, and he's asking, he says anyone can answer this question. He's saying, if given a chance to remove or add a rule in boxing, which one would you add or remove? Mike?
Hmm. That's a good question.
It is.
How to remove a rule. Standing eight count. I'd like to see them take that out. Standing eight.
For the safety of boxers?
For the safety of boxers, yeah. Yeah. That standing eight, man, as long as you train really hard, you can trick the ref into thinking that you're okay. And that's where a lot of the damage comes later on in life, is those extra punches to the head after that concussion's already happened. And when you're standing in front of that ref, you can sometimes trick them, make them think that you're okay and you're not, and that's a dangerous thing. And end up with some pretty bad brain injuries.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's if you watch it, it's gotten a lot better over the years, but if you watch some of the older fights, I mean, they would just get pummeled and they'd keep coming back, and the refs would allow it to keep going on. And it has gotten better, but yeah, I hear your point, Mike.
Yeah, that's a good one. I can't think of any other one that I'd remove. I don't know if I'd add any, but I think that standing eight, take that out. If the guy, you can see it in them sometimes, and I'm surprised that half the time they get to continue.
And Mike,
you have to imagine there's.
Go ahead, Christian. Go ahead.
I'd say there's got to be a certain amount of pressure to keep these guys going and keep the fights going at the same time, kind of thing. And you don't want to discount a guy too early, especially when you've got the potentially millions of dollars on the line. You can't be that ref who just said, no, he's done too early, because then you're never going to work again.
That's true. This is true.
Well, that's a good point too. I mean, is it solely up to the ref, or should there be doctors on the sidelines too, having a say?
I don't think the doctors get a say in it, really. It's mostly up to the ref.
Yeah, no.
Mostly up to the ref's discretion. But unless the ref becomes a doctor.
No, I was saying, should there be?
Yeah, I think there should. I think they should. That would be good. It'd be nice to see that.
But Mike had touched on techniques in his answer there, and I know we discussed after our show last week. We went on for quite a while about techniques, and Derek, you had some good points to make.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions out there was, how do young boxers choose a boxing style? And I think before we answer that question, you kind of have to dig into what are the different boxing styles out there. And I know, Christian, I can talk a little bit maybe about what a boxer is and a boxer puncher. And if you want to talk a little bit about swarmers or sluggers, maybe, we can divide it up a little bit that way. But a boxer is a classic technician in what they're doing. And, they're the type of guys, they have great footwork. They're using their jab. They're staying on the outside, but they can also, punch on the inside a bit. But they basically, like, you think of them, they're getting in and they're getting out. They're getting in and they're getting out, and they're doing their damage very slowly and methodically. And they pick apart their opponents little by little, and you very rarely see them winning on by knockouts. I mean, a lot of the times it's mostly like unanimous decisions, or they're winning on points, and they're great to watch from somebody that's that likes boxing and is interested in it. I think they love to watch those guys. And a boxer puncher is almost exactly the same as a boxer, except you throw in that they've got power behind them, right? So they have knockout capability, and having that power, that's like, it's something you're born with. It's not something, you can learn it, but it's really like it's a God-given gift to have that power. So they're great. They're the well-rounded boxers. And that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview. Like, for me, a pure boxer would be like a Floyd Mayweather. right? Extremely technical, probably one of the best technical fighters out there, possibly, in my opinion. Boxer punchers, for me, a great example would be like a Sugar Ray Robinson, right? That guy he was just incredible. He had the knockout power. If you look at his stats, he's, and the stats tell a lot. If you look at his stats, he had a pretty, considering the volume of fights that he took on, he had a pretty high knockout or technical knockout ratio. But that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview, and then we'll, and then Christian, if you want to kind of talk a little bit more about some of the other styles, maybe, and then we can circle back to how boxers, choose that fighting style.
Sure, be happy to. I mean, I don't think we want to get too heavily into footwork just now, because we could probably spend an entire episode on footwork alone.
Yeah.
We could definitely do that. We could definitely spend an entire episode talking about Muhammad Ali's footwork.
Absolutely,
for sure. So I mean, a couple of the other styles that Derek hadn't touched on yet. One would be your classic swarmer, and it's a fairly basic concept, and the idea is simply being that you're going to overwhelm your opponent with just constant, relentless pressure. You're going to get in early. You're going to stay on the inside. And it's a technique that's going to rely mostly on mostly on hooks and uppercuts, because you're going to want to stay close to the body. And that's going to be favored especially by someone who doesn't necessarily have the reach in a fight. If you're on the short end of the reach in a fight, that's going to be to your benefit to keep your opponent nice and close and not let them use that reach on you.
That's why a lot of boxers today actually have different techniques for different fighters, or different styles for different fighters.
Well, ideally, you're going to be using a little bit of everything in the right moment. And these almost kind of fall into personality types. How if you're not watching yourself, you're going to fall into one of these categories if you're not paying attention, and if you're not being as technical as you should be. Because on the exact opposite end of the swarmer, you've got your outboxer or outfighter, and he wants the opposite. This is someone who has that extended reach. He has the advantage in reach against his opponent, and he wants to keep him at arm's length for as much of that fight as he can.
Yep, that's what does the most damage.
Exactly. So you're going to see a lot more crosses, a lot more jabs off a fighter like that. But you're not going to see a whole lot of knockouts. This is the kind of guy who's going to win fights on points, because you're not going to he's fully extended. He's not getting the full power behind his shot.
I think speed comes into it as well at that point.
Yeah,
for sure. You're back into footwork as well. You got to be real quick on your feet.
That's why they skip. That's why all boxers skip, man. Get on their feet real fast, move around quick.
And then you got sub categories like your counter punchers, which isn't a great place to be necessarily. That's where you're mostly going to be relying on trying to tire your opponent out. You're going to let him throw some shots and capitalize on mistakes that he makes. Which is, again, it's a great technique if used properly, but if your reflexes aren't bang on, you're going to take a lot of damage if you're waiting for your opponent to make a mistake. So, because there's always the possibility that he doesn't.
So, Mike, are there any fighters today that are innovating technique that we should be on the lookout for?
There's actually quite a few guys that are up and comers this time. Their names
because of their technique. I mean,
yeah, because of their technique. Like, you're not gonna. There's not just one technique to watch. All these new fighters nowadays are training just like the guys in UFC. It's all different styles all the time, so that they're ready for any kind of opponent. So really, all these new fighters coming up now are much more exciting to watch than the guys from back in the day, just because of their training. The training is so much more intense these days and so much more technical that they're trying to train these guys as an all-around fighter, not just the counter puncher or the inside man or the swarmer. They're trying to become all of those at once. They don't want to just become that one guy. They want all of it. So honestly, any of the new boxing matches that you watch and any of the new up-and-coming fighters coming are new. They're innovative. They're fast. Their training is much better. They're much better fighters all around. So honestly, I can't just pick one. Just watching any of the new guys, it's exciting. The fighting is exciting.
What about the argument that aside from technique, you have an art to boxing. There's an art. A natural born, talented boxer, yes, might be trained in certain techniques, but there's an art to the boxing skill.
Definitely there is an art. When it comes to a fighter choosing his style, the number one thing that it's based on is your natural traits to begin with. What your natural traits are, what your instincts are. That's the first thing that happens. That's what a fighter gets in tune with that. Then they initiate the technique and style based on their training.
Yep.
Then after that, it becomes a gym culture. Who's in their gym? How often do they fight the people in their gym? How aggressive they train with these guys? The kind of speed and footwork and counterpunching skills that they get in their gym. Then after that, it becomes the trainer and the years you spend with him, the longer, the more you train, the more months you spend together listening to that guy, everything will all add up. And it becomes, you become this all around fighter that's based out of your gym. But then you gotta use competition as well. Competition will add to your style. The better fighters you fight, the better you get, the better your style gets. So there's a lot of factors when it comes to choosing your style and becoming these all around fighters nowadays.
Like, I agree. And like the thing is if you're a young fighter and the question was, like, how do you choose your fighting style? Well, I think the fighting style kind of chooses you, but the first thing is like you start out, they're going to teach you classic boxing, right? They're going to hand you
fundamentals.
Yeah, they're going to start off with the conditioning. They're going to set you in the gym. They're going to give you a skipping rope, and they're going to say, "Look at that light in the corner." And when it turns red, you stop skipping. When it turns green, you keep skipping, and it's 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, and you keep going. And then they start teaching you shadow boxing and the jab, and it just progresses, right? But then eventually a trainer will catch your, they'll catch his eye, and then they'll start, they'll look at them, and then
all the progression. They watch your progression. And the minute that they see something in you, they approach you, and then they'll start taking you in under their wing.
And then exactly, and then you start sparring, and then they'll say, "Boy, this guy's got like a great chin. Maybe he's going to end up being more of like a slugger style, or like he's got really like his footwork is terrible, right? He's got flat feet and he's not doing anything, and he can't move around. So, but he's got a great chin, so now he's a slugger, right? Like it's identifying, and I don't. But I think you're right. I think they're probably evolving a little bit more for, like they're trying to switch up styles and not be so, so regimented in what they're doing.
See, a lot of the fighters now today that I've noticed, no matter what weight class you're watching, everybody's following the same checklist. You want Mike Tyson's power.
Yeah.
You want Floyd Mayweather's defense. You want Pernell Whitaker's head movement. You want Muhammad Ali's footwork. You want Roy Jones Jr. for his hand speed, and you want Rocky Marciano's chin. Yeah. And you put that all together, and you get a champion. Yeah, so totally. I think all guys are training to have this as their arsenal.
Yeah.
Well, these styles that we've been talking about, I mean, as I said, they're less styles these days because it is much more rounded in a much more rounded discipline, the training. They're almost more personality traits, how, without your training, this is the style you would fall into. And they can almost be considered like starting off points. So when you first meet with a trainer and you start doing your conditioning and everything else, these trainers are going to recognize that, you're instinctually, an outfighter or, a swarmer, or this guy's boxing southpaw, his stance is southpaw instinctually. We might have a switch hitter on our hands, which would be great for for the switch hitter, not for anyone else. But these are more like, these are baselines now, where a trainer would look at that, see where you're starting from, and then they add those different layers on top.
Yeah. Hey guys, I want to know, I watched a fight recently. It was Sugar Ray Robinson against Jake LaMotta, and I think they fought over 6 different times, and I think this was the last one. It was called it's a bad name. It was called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But it really shows you the contrasting two. Like, you should watch it. Really good contrasting styles. Like Sugar Ray Robinson, complete, like, well-rounded, incredible boxer, like a real boxer puncher. But then if you look at Jake LaMotta, he's like a hybrid, I would say, between like a swarmer and a slugger. And he's like, the chin on him, like, I don't know how he didn't fall down. He just kept taking it, and he just kept moving forward. Like, he just keeps moving forward and so aggressive, like methodically. And you guys should check it out if you haven't already. It's really good. And it really, really illustrates like two different distinct styles, in my opinion.
Wow. So I noticed that we're actually coming up to the closing minutes of our second episode.
Wow, it seems to fly by so quick.
I know, I know.
Once we start talking about fights, I love talking fighting, man. Fighting's the best. You know, fighting solves everything. Remember that. I think, so there's a lot of upcoming fights. Obviously, the next one that everybody's talking about is the Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson on Saturday, November 28th. Remember, it's pay-per-view. Everybody needs to go out and watch that. I think it's going to be a classic of what Christian was talking about there, some swarmers. There's going to be a bunch of swarming in that, and hopefully it's Mike Tyson swarming Roy Jones Jr. Go, Mikey.
I would like to say that they're not moving that quick these days, but again, Tyson's still quick.
Oh my God, he's when it comes to speed. Well, honestly, you know what? I want to correct that. When it comes to speed, Mike Tyson, man, the speed is unbelievable with that guy, and he's what, 52 years old now?
Yeah.
For a guy that size, yeah, he's bloody quick.
He looks better today than he did in the last 5 years of his actual boxing career.
Yeah. Don't forget Roy Jones, though, man. That guy was fast. Like,
yes,
fast.
Yes. Fastest hands ever.
And incredible reflexes. But that's the problem, is reflexes go with age. So he's got to be careful. And then you step into a ring with a guy that's got natural God-given power like Mike Tyson, you could get really hurt really badly at that age. You know, it's kind of scary.
Hey, Jones has a better record than Tyson.
Yep.
You talk about
knows what he's doing.
Yep.
That's another thing when it comes to styles and technique. That's another thing you got to take into consideration. These fighters, the longer they're in the game, the older they get, the more their body aches. So their training becomes different. Their fighting styles become different because they don't want to take that damage anymore.
Yeah.
You get a lot of the counter fighters.
What's the quote? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
That's the best way to knock down some guy's technique is punches to the face.
All right. Well, listen. Before we sign off, we're not going to upgrade. Any last comments going around the table? Derek, anything?
No. Just be careful, guys. It's always worrisome when you see these old guys going at it, because that's when injuries can happen. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, that's why they got pillows on their hands for this fight.
Yeah.
You know,
well, on the other side of it, you know, new guys need to take care against concussions as well, especially when they're choosing these styles. You know, go to an actual boxing gym. Don't just pick up some gloves and start wailing on your best friend and your brother in the backyard kind of thing.
Yep. Get trained properly.
Get a proper trainer, and that's the best way to, get some good defensive techniques, and that's the best way to guard against concussions.
Yep. It'll keep you safer.
And if you are going to do it in your backyard, film it and put it on YouTube.
Definitely. We should start doing that at my house. Well, we'll start our own League of Legends.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for joining me again.
Guys, what we should do is watch some of these fights coming up.
That is the plan, Mike. That is the plan.
Yes. Saturday. Saturday's a big day. There's a few fights.
Nice.
So
right on.
We should definitely watch those.
And to the viewers out there, thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully you subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Hey, thanks.
See you later, guys.